Hello. Good day to everyone and welcome. Good morning to our EGADE Business School full-time students and members of our faculty joining us here in Monterrey this morning, and to the students joining us virtually from our business schools of the Global Network in Advanced Management across North and Latin America. And good afternoon and good evening to our students joining us from their Global Network partners in Europe, Africa, and Asia. It is an honor to welcome you to the third session of the CEO Speaker Series, an initiative of the Yale Program on Stakeholders Innovation and Management in collaboration with the Global Network for Advanced Management, and hosted today by EGADE Business School here in Monterrey, Mexico. This CEO series has already hosted at Yale School of Management Indira Nooyi, former CEO of PepsiCo, and Paul Polman, former CEO of Unilever, in conversations with Ted Snyder, former Dean of Yale School of Management, that broadly explore how business can do well by doing good. Today, we are delighted to welcome our distinguished EGADE alumni, Fernando González Olivieri, CEO of Cemex, alongside Horacio Arredondo, our Dean at EGADE, who is the host of this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you, Maria.
Before we begin, let me introduce Fernando. Fernando González serves as the Chief Executive Officer of Cemex since 2014. In his more than 30 years with the company, Fernando has held several senior management positions. He has led several major transformations at Cemex, including the global implementation of the digital strategy to provide a unique customer experience, as well as the launching of the Future in Action initiative, a comprehensive sustainability strategy to address climate change to convert Cemex in a net zero CO2 company. In 2023, he was named president of the Global Cement and Concrete Association. He serves on the board of directors of Cemex, Grupo Cementos de Chihuahua, Axtel, and Tech Milenio University. And as I mentioned before, Fernando is a proud MBA EGADE alumni. Welcome, Fernando. Now I invite Horacio Arredondo to begin this conversation.
Thank you, Maria. Fernando, thank you for being here. I will make a brief introduction about Cemex so you can learn more about this great Mexican company. Cemex is approaching its 120th anniversary as a leading globally respected Mexican multinational in the construction material and solution industry. The company offers a portfolio of products including cement, ready-mix concrete, aggregates, and urbanization solutions, commit to long-term value creation through innovation and sustainability. The Cemex journey began here in the northeast of Mexico in 1906, listing on the Mexican Stock Exchange in 1976 and achieving significant global expansion by the early 90s. By 1999, Cemex was listed on the New York Stock Exchange. The company ramped up its sustainability focus in the early 2000s and has led an industry-leading drive on digitalization through Cemex Go and other strategic transformation initiatives over the past 20 years. Today, Cemex has a diversified portfolio of products and services with nearly 50,000 employees and operations in nearly 100 countries across the Americas, Caribbean, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and Asia. Last year, Cemex achieved a record EBITDA growth of 25% to $3.3 billion and making substantial progress in its decarbonization commitment with a goal to achieve the decarbonization by 2050. And Fernando is leading this endeavor for almost 10 years. So welcome, Fernando, to EGADE Business School, and thank you for joining us. I will start with the first question. What do you consider to be the top 3 strategic capabilities of Cemex as a Mexican multinational that enables it to compete so successfully as a leading global company?
Sure. Well, let me start by thanking for inviting me to this interesting session on this alliance and the opportunity to talk about Cemex. You know, unfortunately, it will last only 1 hour, and I can spend the whole day talking about the company. But Let me refer to 2 or 3 characteristics or capabilities that Cemex has nowadays. That was not the case when Cemex started its internationalization process like 25 or more years ago. But nowadays, I think in Cemex there is lots of knowledge of our industry globally. And that's something that takes time, effort, and through time, I think nowadays is one of the strategic capabilities of the company. It's vast knowledge of markets, products, competitors, dynamics, attractiveness or characteristics of a market in which you prefer not to participate, and that type of knowledge, and that's very helpful. Long time ago, initially we didn't have a clue, so it was a strength needed to be developed, and through time it's been happening. The second capability that again nowadays Cemex has, didn't have time ago, it's talent. In order to approach a project, when Cemex started moving internationally, I call it was a project. It was a dream, it was a concept. But guess what? You need talent of certain type to be successful in developing an international company. And this is talent, let's say, managerial talent as well as technical talent. And it's a particular type of talent. You can have a very well prepared executive doing business in a specific region of a specific country. But when you need to do business in almost all continents, then you need a specific skill in your executive and technical talent. So that has been developed through time. To give you an idea on how this happens, initially, Cemex hired like 25 executives in order to start preparing them. I was one of those. But through time and through acquisitions, because the internationalization of the company came mainly through acquisitions, nowadays, more than 70% of executives and technicians in the company were integrated through these acquisitions. So acquisitions in Germany, you got German talent in management as well as technical, or Spain, or Colombia, or the Philippines, or Egypt. So nowadays it's a strong team of very diverse people with very diverse backgrounds. So that's something that I do consider a strength in the company. And another one that is, this one is a kind of a tradition in the company, even before moving international, which is in a business in which you sell products that are considered commodities, the lowest cost structure is key to succeed. So you cannot compete by the way, we don't consider our products commodities or fully commodities, but most of people do. And in this type of business, you better have the lowest cost base, costs and expenses, because that's the only way to really compete with advantage through time. So maybe those three specific issues, it's a good example of the type of issues that Cemex has developed through time.
Probably our students will ask some questions about talent and how to build remember that you could, here in the audience, please start to think about some questions that you want to do to Fernando. And of course, in our audience online, you can send us questions if you want to ask questions to Fernando. A second question, Fernando, that I have here. As a global CEO, building trust and alignment with stakeholders around the company's vision and performance on long-term value creation is crucial. How do you foster a culture of engagement across Cemex diverse stakeholders that probably they may have competing interest.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, bringing and aligning the goodwill of different stakeholders is a challenge. I think the main way to do it is with constant communication. Transmit your messages to whatever the stakeholder. If it is investors, I'm not a specialist in communications, but the only thing that I have learned is that you have to repeat at least 10 times something until the guy you are communicating with starts receiving the basics of the message you've been trying to convey. So it's mainly communications. How can you manage 50,000 employees to share the idea and the identity of being part of one global company? Communications. How do you transmit the intent? For instance, something that is very relevant for us in our industry and for the companies, how do you convey the message that Cemex wants to be carbon neutral while being part of the so-called hard-to-abate industries? Communications. Customers, same thing. How do you convince that, again, even though products might look like commodities, how do you convince them that our products do have certain, and services do have certain characteristics that, if they try, for sure they are going to value and they are going to be, this is a commercial, they will prefer our products rather than other products available, products and services available in the market. So I think it's about communications. Let me refer to one topic that maybe I will refer it again, which is, this has been valid since ages, but when I was seated in your place a few years ago, things didn't happen as fast as they are happening nowadays. And just the change in speed is a challenge itself. So in this communication process and knowing that it takes at least 10 times, customers, investors, bankers, employees, communities, neighbors, and you don't have the time, meaning that time passes by, things change so fast that the efforts in order to succeed on bringing the goodwill of many stakeholders, nowadays is much more challenging than what it used to be.
And now that transparency is so important to do business.
Indeed.
And in an industry like the one that you competed, I imagine that is something that takes a lot of time of your day by day.
Indeed.
Yeah. I was preparing this conversation. I was reading your integrated report. I like the name, Setting the Pace. And in the report, you state that it is projected that 2 out of 3 people will be living in cities by 2050. This migration will require the infrastructure equivalent of New York City to be built every month for the next 40 years to meet population growth and rapid urbanization. This expansive growth, coupled with the rapid depletion of the Earth's natural resources, create significant challenge for future economic development and climate action. It's quite interesting that the company states the challenge so clear in your report. Through the Cemex Future in Action climate action strategy, the company is steadily transitioning towards becoming a net zero carbon emission company by 2050. What changes in Cemex relationship with customers, employees, suppliers, investors, and other stakeholders have been important to achieving the alignment around that amazing goal that you have?
Yes, well, let me start by saying that we've been working with the idea of leading with climate change and biodiversity since, I don't remember, maybe even before I joined the company. But a few years ago, something happened. So all the efforts that were done in the previous years on trying to lead with the impact of climate change and biodiversity, suddenly, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but suddenly it became a much more systematic approach with much more stakeholders really either promoting, incentivizing, requesting, or demanding businesses to deal with the impact of your business activity in climate. So when we started, observing this new phenomena, I mean, again, climate change is not new, and it's been there since ages, but this new systematic approach, we said, we better reflect on how to adapt. In Spanish, there is a saying, necesitamos ponernos las pilas, meaning we need to change what we were doing. And through a reflection and learning process, we then decided for a new strategy on how to deal with climate change. So we started speaking about climate action. And that's the name we are using is Future in Action. And it was complex to understand how is it that a hard-to-abate industry and company could aspire to be carbon neutral. By the way, the cement industry emits about 8% of total CO2 in the world. So that's more or less the relevance or the proportion of our contribution to CO2 in the world. So the first step was kind of similar to what's going on here. I defined a group of people that I thought was the people that was going to be related to the strategy, and we started a learning process from scratch. It was like 12 seminars of a day each, just to start learning. And I already used a word which is complex, so it was complex. And what we learned is that complexity, or part of it, it's because you don't know. So complexity is not necessarily intrinsic to the issue, but to how you are dealing with the issue. So now we think that complexity has almost disappeared. Now we know how to do it. Now we know that you can create value while you are making this transition to a low carbon economy. And now, and it was like 5 years ago, and now is like, we have it as a part of our to-do list. So the problem has been solved in terms of what is the best proposition and the most ambitious proposition and how to achieve it. We adopted the 1.5 degree scenario, which is the most stringent scenario available nowadays, meaning that whatever you have to do in order for the temperature not to go above 1.5 degree scenario, that's according to the Paris Agreement. We were certified by SBTi, which is the organization, the most known and serious organization, certifying that what company says is true and it's not greenwashing. Which there is lots of greenwashing, by the way, but. And then we define, we call them roadmaps. So knowing what is the target, knowing what is the task, now what we need to do is a program to start executing. So we've been already 5 years executing these roadmaps. Roadmap is, imagine there is a cement plant with certain characteristics, size, and what location, whatever, and there is a roadmap saying in this plant we need to invest for the plant to be able to use waste as fuel. and this is the investment. So there is a roadmap per plant out of the 60 cement plants Cemex has. And if we think on the targets, our target is to reduce 47% of CO2 by 2030 and be carbon neutral by 2050. And after we decide for this new strategy with very specific roadmaps and the likes, we have reduced 13% of CO2 emission per ton of cement. If you are not familiar with the numbers, 13%, there are higher proportions, but it's a lot. What we are reducing nowadays, every year, is what it took us 5 years before. So it's an accelerated path for us to achieve our 2030 target of reducing 47% and then to get to carbon neutral. So first step, as I told my team, guys and gals, we cannot manage what we do not understand. So step one, let's understand what we have to do. Then the other issue is you have to communicate that to broader audiences. And when I said that this is nowadays a systematic approach, is because customers started asking us, what products with lower CO2 content do you sell? Because I want to buy those and not the traditional ones. Investors, what's your CO2 generation per dollar of sales? Because investors, particularly in Europe, they added some criteria to their portfolios and they limit the content of CO2 per dollar of investment. It's a criteria that 5, 10, 15 years ago was not there or was not, let's say, used in a wide manner. Authorities, the same. So what's your plan? Each country has its plan to reduce CO2, and cement in each country is a relevant source of generation. So what's your plan, and how is it that you're going to be contributing to the national plan? So it's once it's clear, I said it is solved, although it's not being fully executed. But conceptually, it's hard to do nowadays. So it's much simpler.
It's about execution, but
it's about
first
execution.
you need to think a lot.
Indeed.
In fact, when you were telling us about your strategy, I struck two words that resonate a lot with what we are doing here in EGADE. You said, I translate what you said in the first place as rethink, and our purpose here in EGADE is to rethink the future of business, to make an impact in the sustainable development of Latin America.
Good luck.
And we are trying to do that. So you need to work a lot on that. And also, you mentioned the word action. In fact, we are in the decade of the action. The UN has declared that this is the decade of the action, and we need to act. It's not anymore about thinking, but more about action. And you will have the Action Week during your stay here, and you will learn a lot about sustainability, social impact, and so on and so on. So welcome here to. They start on Monday, so you are learning about the EGADE. I have another question. As Cemex has increasingly focused on ESG metrics, how has this commitment strengthened Cemex standing as a global company? Because right now, ESG is in this, fire, So how is your experience
and
with
maybe that? Because of good reasons, maybe. I never use the term ESG.
Okay.
It's a way to combine three relevant aspects in business: environmental, social, and governance. But I do prefer to deal with issues without necessarily combining them. For instance, environmental, I already said, we have a very ambitious plan. We are delivering. we call this decade, we call it the decade to deliver.
Okay, great.
Meaning need to accelerate dramatically what we were doing before. But there are other issues in environmental, which is basically the quality of air. You know, and every industry has emissions. So you need to deal with them, you need to invest in the best technology to minimize. Of course, you need to comply with the regulations prevailing in a given country on all those emissions. So that's all the environmental part. By the way, we, as a global company, and we are doing business Mexico, US States, and Europe, and UK, and other countries, we cannot have different, different phases. We cannot run our business, let's say, in Mexico with the current and prevailing standards in Mexico. We run environmental issues globally, Mexico included, of course, according to the most demanding laws and regulations in emissions, which happens to be some of them European, some of them US. So if I give you info on our emissions in Mexico and you compare them with the current laws and regulations, which, by the way, have not been reviewed in the last 4 years, you know, it's like a huge difference. Then on governance, I think business community, you mentioned transparency. It has to do a lot with transparency and how, in this case, investors can be more confident that a company can be managed through time without major risks in its management. So, and that's governance. So how the company is governed. You know, there are different types of investors. The trader that is making hundreds of transactions per hour, and the value investor, which is a fund that invests and remains invested in the company for a time. So in this case, these companies, the value investors, are much more oriented to strategy and to governance. So I remember once I was surprised because I visited one of them and I was not that clear on traders, investors. I was just starting my career as CFO. So I started referring to the quarterly results. I said, wait, don't bother. We don't have people to listen to your quarterly calls. We're not interested in those. What's your strategy? What's your governance? And who are the ones participating in the board and in management? That's it. With that, we will take decisions. So in governance, in Cemex, there was a traditional governance that it was changed when our former chairman and CEO passed away 10 years ago, Mr. Lorenzo Zambrano. The most relevant was dividing the chairman position and the CEO position, which is a good practice. Many companies don't do it. Maybe they don't consider it a good practice, but we do. We understand that the main responsibility of a board is to be on top of strategy of the company and to supervise management. So how can you supervise yourself? Type of if you're the chairman and you're the CEO, it sounds like either a very challenging position or a position in which you are constantly in conflict. So either you're the chairman or you are the CEO. And then social issues is, you know, perhaps this one is not that new. What might be, let's say, non-traditional for us is what are the social contributions in developed countries? Because in emerging countries, we were born in Mexico, so we understand we are an emerging mindset type of company. So we have the patrimonio hoy, which is how to help people to build their own houses, financing, provide materials. And there are a number of of programs like those. The challenge is how do you contribute socially in countries like are developed.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is that there are always good opportunities to do that and to participate in challenges in the communities you are
serve.
part and you serve. So the three, I think, are having evolving. They are very relevant. They are all related to the so-called license to operate and to the transparency you were mentioning.
Yeah. One final question before we enter in the question of your leadership. But when I was listening to you, one question pop up. Here we truly believe that the convergence of technology will allow us to really be more sustainable, being more developed. It's not about decreasing, it's not about shrinking economies, but to really take advantage of the innovations and technology that we can develop. So in your opinion, what are the main technologies that will really impact your industry in the future?
There are different types of technologies, or technologies refer to different domains. For instance, nowadays, the use of hydrogen in our production processes is technically a challenge because of the characteristic, not the characteristic of our production process. And certain technologies, part of it could be practices really, protocols on how to inject some hydrogen into your kilns. But there are also new technologies that might modify the characteristics of the kiln so you can use large proportions of hydrogen. So that, let's say on the production side, there are a number of technologies, the use of nuclear, the use of hydrogen, the use, I think I mentioned before, in our industry in particular, the use of waste to produce cement. I don't know if you saw, it's an old movie already, Back to the Future. Do you remember when the guy put a banana skin into the fuel tank?
Yeah.
Well, more or less something like that. I mean, it's not, you don't put the banana in the kiln, but you know, something similar. So there is that domain. The other domain is what is it that technology is enabling in how to manage a company, all the administrative aspect. We think that technology by itself, you know, okay, if you are a fan of technology, good for you. But what we think in technology in terms of what is it that can impact into the way we manage the company, into the way we operate, into the way we sell. And then we start finding uses for technology. So for instance, in the case of management, to make a very long story short, but you know, all the back office of the company has been centralized, has been fully automated, and has been fully outsourced. So our payroll of whatever number of countries is done in, I think it's the Philippines, I don't remember, but accounting is done in India, and receivables are done in whatever. I mean, it's 4 or 5 companies with locations, convenient locations all over the world. So nowadays, for us and for other companies, all these managerial activities related to back office is not an activity that you develop with your own employees, but you hired a company specialized in those activities, and you pay per transaction. We find that very convenient because transactions depends on volumes or the size of your business, if it grows or it shrinks. So you convert that cost into a lower cost and into a variable cost. So and that's thanks to what technology enables. You know, Years ago, that was just impossible.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's doable. Think like in Uber. Uber was not possible unless there was a technology enabling the idea of a customer and a provider of service can communicate that fast, that simple, that convenient. So it's something like that. And in the case of the commercial relations, we decided, you mentioned it, we decided to develop a superior customer experience enabled by technologies. So something like Uber or Netflix or like the likes. But we are a business to business activity. We are not a business to consumer. And we've been engaged. We've been already 6 years investing in developing an app. Let's put it that way, a platform for our customers to digitally transact with us. So that's another very relevant domain of the use of technology.
Great.
And the thing is that this idea of technology and new technologies never ends.
Yeah.
It just never ends,
And the challenge for you guys is how you understand that technology and how you manage people to really convey the technology in the main process that the company has.
The challenge is always understanding the technology, understanding the business, and the third challenge is how is it that you can create an advantage by putting them together.
Fernando, you recently celebrated your 10th anniversary as a CEO at Cemex. Following an outstanding career, Maria told us about that in distinct leadership roles at the company. Could you share to this young audience 3 pieces of advice for building a leadership impact that is transformational, especially in a world facing rapid change and unprecedented challenges?
I do have hard times when giving advice. I hardly give advice even to my kids. It's. I think it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
You can be wrong. So, but I think reflecting on so many issues that are related to leadership. If it is a leadership with business purposes, which I think is what we are talking about, I already mentioned before, I think to be an effective leader, you have to deeply understand what you're leading. To me, that's the first, let's say, characteristic, condition, how to call it. If you have no clue, it's an exaggeration, but if you have no clue on the business you're leading, most probably you won't be able to lead it effectively. So, no shortcuts. You have to deeply understand the business. I'm not inviting anybody to be, what's the word?
Micromanager?
A micromanager, not at all. By the way, once a collaborator told me, lots of trust among us. And he told me, boss, I think you're micromanaging all the things in my function. And I remember telling him, I think you're right. But let me tell you something. I do not micromanage everything. I micromanage the aspects that I believe that should be developed much better or much faster. So whenever that's needed, yes, I do micromanage.
Go for it. Yeah.
But if you don't understand the thing, that is not a possibility for you. You have to always leave maybe it's too rude, but that's the way it is. Other aspects, well, I think if you are going to be leading for a long period of time, there are other characteristics related to the leader as a human being. How do you deal with people? How do you treat people? Do you make people feel like because of your position you are a superior human being? And by being superior, you treat them in a kind of a disrespectful manner? You are completely wrong. In Cemex, the message I say to everybody is we all, the 50,000 employees, including myself, we all have the same value and the same dignity as humans. What I do and what others do in the company is an accident. You know, we can talk about accidents in other occasions, but we all have the same dignity and the same value in the company. If people perceive that from the leader, I think it's like, you know, people just will get close, will empathize, will be willing to work with you. And what else can I say? You know, it's the other thing that helps is be visible. Be visible, be available. You know? This is perhaps I think more related to style than other things, you know, because some leaders do believe that the less they show up, the better for their, you know, their position or their, por la fama, you know. And if you show up too much, guess what? You are going to devaluate your. I don't think it's exactly the other way around. You know, leadership has to be felt. Leadership needs to have faces. I'm not referring only to the top position, but there are many leading positions in large organizations. So it's about being, you know, visible, present, and with the possibility of interacting with people. Recently, we adjusted our logos and things like that. I thought that the previous one, we kept the essence, but we changed them. I thought that the ones we used to have were extremely serious, even reflecting a time that has disappeared already.
And that you are a concrete also, yeah, you know?
Yeah, and it was a different time. Sometimes I call it the times of imperial Cemex. To focus and to give the idea and to demonstrate that the company is simple, is connected, it's you know, people can communicate. I can talk to whoever in the company, and whoever in the company can communicate with me. Everybody has my mobile. Everybody knows my mail, and so it's a different way to show leadership and a different way for people to understand their role, and they feel much more confident that what they do in the company is relevant, known, appreciated, type of thing. You know? Yeah,
those three are good ones. So don't be. So let's open the floor to some questions. So, we have a lot. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, you can.
Let's switch. Thank you.
There you go.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you. Well, first of all, I want to commend you for all the work done on sustainable development, but also on Cemex Go and on implementing new technologies into the company. My main focus right now, as we are all aspiring leaders and maybe future top executives in different industries, is to ask you about the mistakes maybe you've done along the way, and also maybe a cool story about it and what you learned from it.
That's
You want to
very challenging question. No, I think you know, through time, I would like to thank. Are you familiar with baseball?
Yes.
Okay. So the good players, you know, with a record of 300, they are big leagues. Meaning, out of 10 times, they do a good job in 3. So there are always plenty of either mistakes or omissions. I'm thinking of one. I have a very recent good example. In 2012, in Cemex, we were still engaged with a very complex, very challenging financial situation. So among other responsibilities, I was asked to manage Neoris. Neoris was the IT company of Cemex. And at that time, the name of the game was paying down debt. So my first reaction on this company, Neoris, was, let's divest it. Why do we need an IT company in Cemex? Maybe it's a nice to have, but now that we need to reduce debt, it's a good way to do it. The situation is that at that time, Neoris was losing money. And I said, it doesn't matter. Because whoever is interested in this activity are experts that will be capable of
turning
it down. Yeah. So, of course, the price expected for the company was not going to be the max price, but okay. I mean, we needed to reduce debt. So, okay, we are open to the idea of receiving a lower price than, and we engaged in a divestment process, and it failed miserably. 2, 3 companies, interested, and when looking the first set of info that we developed removed, only one remained, and a few weeks later, not even that company wanted to buy Neoris. No, it was they saw it as a high risk proposition. During the process, and this type of companies is about people. And during the process, a sale process, several people say, why should I stay? So they started leaving the ship. So what I'm describing is a mistake. That happened. It was long ago, 12 years ago. And then now, we made a plan to divest Neoris. We started 2 years ago, and we sold 65% of the company at a given price. And we just closed selling the other 35% at more than 2 times the value of the first 65%. Through a partnership with other company investing, developing, and bringing customers. And so now we sold Neoris for a value that is like 5 times higher than the value I thought we could have divested in 2012. So I think that is a good example of a mistake. It took me some time to understand that it was really a mistake. So it was not immediate, but fortunately at the end the mistake didn't have
now you can
material consequences. Yeah. Yes.
You can say the story as a
yeah.
We have a question from the online audience. Andrea Solis asked you about at what stage is Cemex on AI and robotics, and what is the estimated impact that a transition to AI and robotics can have on
yes. Cemex? I think AI as such is not necessarily the new generative AI that was introduced to society like a year ago. Yeah. It's, AI has been there already since some time. And we've been working with AI, and now we are incorporated other capabilities coming from generative AI. Because of the decision we took, I think it was 6 years ago, to to focus our digitization strategy in the commercial relation. AI was not an exception. So we've been applying AI and now generative AI on the commercial relation. For instance, something that is very important and AI is enabling is a very AI combined with the cloud combined. It is never only about one specific technology. It's how you combine it with so many other issues. So now we can have very fast responses in quotations or in commitment with customers to have a dynamic pricing. So imagine, no different to what airplanes did years ago. But I think in the case of ready-mix, for instance, ready-mix is a perishable product. So in the case of ready-mix, making a dynamic pricing without the proper technology, it was not necessarily the best way to go. But nowadays, our customers can pick the product, the day, the slot, and if they want to change it, they change it. Of course, we charge them for making changes. But and it's thanks to AI and nowadays being much more convenient with generative AI. And then there are a number of, how to call them, simpler day-to-day activities that can be performed much faster, much better. For instance, I have an example that I like. Internal control has like 3,000 policies, and all of them are available in the Cemex side, for employees. What type of presence you can accept, what value you cannot accept, what to do with them, what is the process to being authorized to make business with your sister or with your father-in-law. There are thousands of those. I wonder who reads them, because it's so big. So there was a generative AI application in the policies. So nowadays, you just ask what you need, and you get the answer according to the information that is described in the policies. So this is one simple example, but multiply that 1,000 times. So everything is now being adjusted or optimized. Now, I would like to distinguish two types of applications in AI or generative AI. One is what some people call the golden cases of what you're doing, meaning something that is very specific to your business, something that you have to develop yourself. Again, technology on the one hand, business on the other hand. So how do you connect it? So what are the specific golden cases that you are going to develop for your customers, for your production lines, for the way you manage the company? And the other way to use AI or generative AI, it's coming automatically. WhatsApp has a generative AI application already. Microsoft 365 already with all the facilities. iPhone 16, the one that is coming, I don't know if this month or next month, will have all the conveniences of the use of AI. So what I'm saying is automatically everything, all devices, technologies, will start changing because they are applying AI, and you will be able to use it through all their platforms. And the others, which I think are the most relevant because they might end up being competitive advantage, are the golden cases.
Great. One last question here. Yeah? Can you share the mic?
So right now, sustainability is a big trend for everyone, investors and consumers. How do you change your message so everyone can understand what you want them to understand without being like greenwashing and all this sensitive stuff?
Yeah. It is very challenging because you never know. Well, let me put it this way. I'm going to be saying a few things about sustainability in Cemex. I already said some of them. Not knowing what you understand, because I don't understand your context. I don't know how familiar you are. I don't know if SBTI tells something to you. I don't know if the scenario 1.5 degree says something that I don't know. So I never know the level of knowledge, either very deep, specialist, or not that deep in our industry. I mean, nobody's obliged to understand our industry, you know. So that's a tremendous challenge. So depending on what I see, I try to communicate the best way possible. So for instance, for you and for the people that is connected, what is expected, or what we better do, is trying to stop climate change, which seems to be a very challenging objective. When we say that in 2050 we're going to be carbon neutral, it is an objective, but it's still more an ambition. Because we have found the way to reduce up to 2/3, 66%, without a specific technology that is carbon capture and storage, which is, it's still part of the challenge with that technology is it needs to continue being developed. And the other part is, according to current norms, regulations, prices of the products, those technologies will create value when incorporated into cement only in Europe and the US. The problem is that 85% of total cement capacity in the world is not in Europe and the US. So we need to solve the equation for Mexico, for India, for China, for Colombia, for the rest of the world. So again, very challenging to communicate. You know, when I use my hat of GCCI, I was appointed president of the Global Cement and Concrete Associations. I try to speak in a much broader way, like the one just mentioned. 2/3 of CO2 generation in cement can be abated with the traditional levers. That's how they're called. Some investments are needed, but those investments are profitable. The main challenge for non-European, non-US companies is how to deal with the last third. Now, we still have like 25 years to solve that problem, but it is a challenge. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah.
Partially?
Yeah.
Which part I didn't answer?
Well, I do understand what you do, but how do you sell that to your customers? Because I'm an engineer in sustainable development, so I can understand more technical stuff. But when I want to sell projects of sustainability to the customer, how do I tell them, like, this is green, when everyone is doing greenwashing? Okay.
Remember I said that like 5 years ago, we started observing a new, more systematic approach to climate change as a kind of a new momentum. In early stages, when we started looking at that, one of the things we did, we can spend the rest of the day talking of the whole strategy, but one of the things we did was to offer our customers lower CO2 products. A ton of cement, traditional type 1 cement, generates 800 kilos of CO2 per ton. We are offering nowadays cement that contains like 450. So it's 60%, 55% of the previous traditional cements. So when we created the brand for it, Bertua, that's a commercial, sorry, but and we started offering that product. Now, in the first few months, it was lots of effort from our sales force to push it, to tell customers, guess what, we have a new product, 60% or 40% less of CO2. But then, in this systematic approach, people started asking for, if you were going to buy a flat, you wanted for the flat to have a lower CO2 content. And the developer wanted materials and the ways to build the building in a way to generate less CO2. And then our customers started asking, do you have lower CO2 cement ready mix? Yes, we do. In the last we created that brand 5 years ago. Yeah, I think 4 or 5 years ago. Today, more than half of our products are Vertua products. With at least, because there are different categories of how much less CO2 content they have. The lowest is a reduction of 25%. So in 5 years, we are selling more than 50% of our products with at least a reduction of 25% of CO2. And what is going on in the market is, as it usually happens, all competitors are doing the same thing. So customers are getting even more demanding on that characteristic. And then they started asking for other characteristics that are related to climate change, which are not necessarily CO2, which is the use of water. How much water are you using per ton of cement? And is that water competing with human and agriculture use? So you start making your own projects, and then you start including in that brand the ready mix in Monterrey nowadays, another commercial. Nowadays, we are using recyclable water that is not convenient either for human or agriculture uses. So we can, whenever we sell ready mix or cement here in Monterrey, we have that stamp already. So something that was not requested by the market 5 years ago, it is now more and more demanded. That's the change. That's what I refer to systematic approach, new stakeholders. Let me tell you a story. I was having a meeting with our team in Alabama in the US, and talking about this in the introduction of Vertua. And the manager there told me, guess what? When I heard that Cemex, including starting with Vertua, I said, low carbon products. And suddenly, his largest customer gave him a call. Do you have Vertua already in Alabama? I said, then I thought, oh my, this is happening everywhere. So that is the change. Did I answer the?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Fernando, thank you a lot for your time.
Thank
we
you.
are ending the interview right now because the interview ended up at 10. I want to recap with a quote that you mentioned that I really like. You said, "A dream needs talent." We recognize here in EGADE that you have top talent. We have many students from Cemex.
Alumni from EGADE.
Yeah,
What else can you ask?
And you really value talent, and here we have an online. We also have a lot of talent. So thank you very much, Fernando, for your time, and thank you, our students also for being here, and for all of you that are outside there in online following this interview for the GNAM CEO series. So thank you very much, and thank you
very much.
Let's give you Fernando a big applause.
Thank you. Nuevamente, gracias por la invitación.
Yeah.
Thank you, Horacio and Fernando, for this interview. Thank you, everybody, for being here to the Connected Companies. And since we are celebrating our national holiday this weekend, also, Viva México.